Thanks for listening to Star Lores. If you like the show, please consider subscribing and giving a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also help us make more great content by becoming a patron at www.patreon.com. We would also love to hear from you on social media. You can follow Star Lores on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Enjoy the show, and may the Force be with you.
You are listening to the Star Lores Podcast.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Are you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder?
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Hey guys, and welcome to Star Lores. This is our review episode of Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Doing it a little bit differently. We're going away from our regular scripted preamble, and we're just going to have a discussion, talk about our thoughts, and what we thought of the movie. My name is Jordan, if nobody knows, and next to me is Christian.
Hello.
And my brother, Sam.
Everything is proceeding as I have foreseen. Something, dark side.
An excellent Palpatine quote. And then also joining us to sit and fill in a chair today is my brother-in-law, John.
Oh man, hey, welcome to me. Thank you.
Yeah, so what we're gonna do today is just kind of a bit of a roundtable discussing our thoughts. We kind of didn't want to release a review episode right away. We wanted to watch the movie, process it a little bit, think about good things, bad things, and whatnot. So this is coming a couple weeks after The Rise of Skywalker was released, which was around Christmas 2019. But yeah, so here we are to discuss Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker.
So just to start off, even on that note, I think it's important that we took time to think about things. I think a lot of people quickly rushed to give their first impressions.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's always the best way to do things. It's kind of like the news, right? When you don't have all the details or you haven't let things process.
Yeah.
So someone's first impressions might not be
yeah,
how they end up feeling about the whole whole experience after.
The problem with Star Wars and even this is a problem with Marvel movie reviews, especially on YouTube and stuff. It's more about not getting it right. It's about getting it first.
Yeah, just like mainstream media kind of attitude, right?
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully this will a little more thoughtful and
hopefully. Some of us were trying to boycott the whole thing, but we're forced. I did this for you guys. You guys forced me into this.
We did it for you, the fans, the people.
I went into this movie, as I told our other brother, Skylar, as long as there are laser swords and ships blowing up in space, I will not be disappointed. That was my expectations for that movie, and
it's a pretty low bar.
As such, I think it made it over that bar quite easily. So I wasn't disappointed by it. I thought it was better than The Last Jedi.
Do we want to go over maybe just what were our initial reactions right after watching the film, Christian?
So that's not the best.
It's
that's not going to be the best
way.
take from me because I actually read all the spoilers before it came out. I had no intention. I'm honest. I had no intention of watching this movie.
I actually didn't either until I was well, let's do it for the podcast.
Yeah. So I did read all the spoilers. So my first impression, I was already jaded going into it. I'll admit that. It's good to check our biases right out of the gate. So I did know where it was going, what was going to happen. So that maybe not be the most fair thing. So I was already angry when the movie started. I will admit there are some positives that now that I've actually seen it. It's not enough to outweigh the negatives, and by any means, I think this is honestly one of the worst Star Wars movies, just above maybe The Last Jedi.
Ooh, I think it's easily above The Last Jedi. But
yeah, I mean that at that bottom you're racing between last and last place.
Above Solo.
Yeah. I actually haven't seen Solo yet.
Oh, yeah.
It's part of my boycott.
John, what was your first reaction?
Yeah, I think I was shocked, to be honest with you. Like, literally in the theater, jaw dropped. The final scene, I mean, I'm assuming we're giving spoilers here. The final scene where Rey was like, "I'm a Skywalker," and I was like, wow. Like, I just...
Was that a good wow or a bad wow?
It was a bad wow. It was like... Okay, so I'll just say that, like, I had fun watching The Last Jedi because I felt like somebody was trolling me, but in a way that I thought was, like, kind of funny. Like, oh, they got me good. They're right, you know? And then later, thinking about it, I was like, none of that made any sense. That was a gong show. And I think I just went into this one and just felt like... just shocked at the lack of polish of the movie, feeling like, the exposition dumps, and like even the opening crawl, like you guys mentioned, it was a mess. Like even the opening crawl, I was like, what are they doing here? Yeah. And then just the realization, like it just became clear in the first 5 minutes, like they did not plan this trilogy out. They did not know what they were doing. Like,
Continuing the grand Star Wars tradition of
it's
not
true.
knowing
winging it.
And there was that other feeling of like, this is a Star Wars movie. Like it feels like a Star Wars movie. It feels like Return of the Jedi in some ways.
Well,
like,
I disagree a little bit with that statement. I think actually probably the prequel trilogy, for all its faults, did have more. It had a direction that it was going the whole way.
I think it was the most concise.
Yeah.
Yes.
But anyways, Sam, what was your initial reaction?
Like I said, there were laser swords and space battles, so it was good on that front. Also, I really like the Dark Empire graphic novel, and this, if anybody's familiar with that, had a lot of similarities to Dark Empire, especially obviously with Palpatine coming back, and even with the Star Destroyers that had like the super laser and stuff. That was also directly from Dark Empire, and obviously the cloning chamber and all that in. Even that whole scene when Kylo first finds Palpatine's like lab thing is very reminiscent of when Luke finds Palpatine's lab in Dark Empire.
Yeah, that is actually something a lot of fans are like criticizing, unfairly criticizing Disney for some of these elements that were actually lifted from the EU. I'll admit that. They weren't the best elements of the EU, and I mean even fans back in the day were like, yeah, you probably shouldn't have done X and Y. Including like, yes, resurrecting the Emperor, that's old. The Emperor having a son actually is drawn. I can't remember what the source material is, but it is actually drawn from the EU as well. Even the relic, the whole thing with Vader's helmet, there's a whole story. It came out like before even, I think, a lot of the movies came out, and it was the glove of Darth Vader, where they find this like Darth Vader relic, and it's used to influence people in the modern time period. In that case, it was Luke Skywalker. So a lot of those elements that people criticize the Disney movie for actually were lifted from the EU.
Yeah. My initial reaction was I enjoyed the film. Like right as soon as I was done, I was like, oh, that's not a bad film. Though immediately I did feel like there were some glaring flaws with it. But I did enjoy it. Like I had like a good feeling. It's not how I felt. I think I feel the same way. Who said John or Christian? You just get punched in the gut after The Last Jedi. I didn't feel that way after Rise of Skywalker. So I did enjoy it initially, but even it's still one of those things. Like the more you think about it, it's like ooh,
the worse it gets.
Yeah, it's like ooh, there's that thing and this thing and that
didn't make
element
sense,
that didn't really work, but I think even I was really worried at the opening crawl because they just like shoved the Palpatine storyline in there
I even thought that
with no setup.
Even the opening line there of the dead speak was just like, I was like, that is just so poorly written.
Yeah.
It does not feel like Star Wars at all.
The first thing I noticed of the opening crawl too is and just it's a vibe of the entire movie is that it was only 3 paragraphs, Every other Star Wars film has a way longer crawl.
I also noticed that it was a
And
very short
It
crawl.
was very short, and to me, it just like reeks of like, I don't know if it's modern audiences or what, but they're scared to let things linger, and the whole movie is like this super frantic and super fast paced, and like they don't want you sitting there in the theater reading text. They want you in the action right now, all the time. Don't think about it, and that just like frantic attitude that the whole movie has.
To me, I think it really reeks of it just being in a development hell for a little while. I'm sure the script was rewritten several
Multiple times.
Yeah,
and
it feels like that kind of movie that was just like cut and recut and then rewritten and they shuffled scenes here and there to make it give a different vibe to it. Yeah, there's definitely I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the experience, but it felt like a deeply flawed film in many ways.
So you're a slave to nostalgia then, Jordan?
Well, am I not allowed to like nostalgic things?
I would just say that scene at the beginning where they're doing that hyperspace jumping. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
that was very cool.
No, that was
I love that.
That was like
terrible.
to me. That was a metaphor for the movie that you were about to
Right,
watch.
exactly.
It's like this is what you're
We're
about
gonna
to
go
see. It's just like
really
woo,
fast and not make a lot of sense.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Don't think about it.
what was it? Hyperspace?
Skipping?
Yeah, hyperspace skipping, which is
hyper
like
skipping or
like
something.
speed-
I can't
yeah,
even
like speed
remember.
skipping.
yeah, something like we never seen that. At least that I am aware of in another
Yeah,
film.
Like
Doesn't that make sense though?
No, it
in
doesn't.
the lore of hyperspace,
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
I've never seen
no, because you need navicomputers and make calculated jumps. The TIE fighters chasing him aren't supposed to be able to make those
They
jumps.
go
go through
They can't
with
follow you because the
Yeah.
whole plot of the last movie was they have this new device that lets you follow people. Like none of it makes sense, and that's the thing. Like if you stop, if I could honestly, you could throw a scene at me and I'll pick like 10 things in it that don't make any sense. But because it's moving so fast, you don't have a minute to think about it and be like, wait a minute, that shouldn't happen.
Yeah, definitely.
Almost every scene was like that.
I was definitely worried about that, but then I kind of I came back in when they did the Kylo and Palpatine scenes. I thought those were pretty cool, and I was pretty happy with their treatment of Palpatine.
Okay, let's start with the positives before we dive
Sure.
too much into the negatives. So
Do we want to just do that? We'll go over the positives and then the negatives.
yeah, because
Sure.
I think we'll spend a majority of our time on. The
Okay,
negatives.
so
At least I
Christian,
will.
you can start, and then we'll go round table.
So yeah, kind of like what you were saying there is the treatment of Palpatine. I'm not happy that they had to bring him back. That was kind of like a story crutch that they needed to use. But the way he looked, like the very gothic, grim, dark kind of feeling of it. You guys have described it as very 40K-esque, if anyone's familiar with Warhammer. Like the horror aspects of it, I actually really enjoyed. He was genuinely terrifying. It was a unique spin. So yeah, I like that. I like the Sith world just aesthetically.
And he was consistent, even if he could do some things maybe that we haven't seen before. He was at least, his character felt consistent with what we've seen from him in the past.
His character does, but his motivations don't, which again is one of those things.
How do you think?
Like if we picked every single detail, man, I'll be here for an hour just me.
No, but
talking.
what do you mean his motivation?
So he spends a majority of the movie saying, "We need to kill Rey. We need to kill Rey." Then all of a sudden, she shows up and he's like, "I want you to kill me." Actually, what happened if Kylo just went and killed her right off the bat, as he told him to do?
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like
He's the emperor.
that-
He's playing 4-dimensional chess.
right,
But he knows.
yeah,
that
he's
he's just
changing
doing-
his plan like
think
that,
it- I
and then
think
he
it-
changes it right back like seconds later when she's like, "No, I'm not going to kill you." He's like, "Okay, I'll just absorb your life then and be okay."
I agree.
Like
that,
it doesn't make sense.
I agree that is. I think that's sloppy, but I don't think it is what Sam said. It seemed they were going more for like a 4D chess element with how.
With a character that just flip flops on motivation without anything explained to you.
Well, no, not necessarily.
I think that's
You just
reading
don't
into
necessarily know his motivation. He said, he just says like he wanted Luke to kill him too, right?
Yeah, but there's like, when Luke tries, which he does, if everyone forgets in The Last Jedi, Luke makes a swing and Vader blocks it.
Right.
The Emperor knew what he was doing there. You can see, he's being
Are you?
manipulative.
Well, now it sounds like you're just reading into it.
No, it literally happened. Luke swings and Vader blocks.
No,
the
I know,
blow.
but you don't know that he knew that he was going to block him.
Yeah,
You don't know.
it's very evident in the subtext of that film. With this, you just have Palpatine just changing motivations on a dime and on a whim.
Okay, well,
But you're right. Like his character, like his overall like feeling to him is consistent with the prequels.
yeah.
And it is Ian McDiarmid reprising his role.
Yeah.
Again, and he's been Palpatine throughout all the movies, all the way back.
Except the very first one.
What? Are you sure?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the holographic.
Oh, the holographic
image. The original holographic image of Palpatine
New Hope
was a woman.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that actually.
Yeah, I believe
it looked like it was a 3D render.
No,
an old 1970s attempt at it, but
yeah.
Can I just say some positives about this movie? So I'll just say, in the first 5 minutes, I was like, this movie's going to be a gong show, but that kind of opened the doors for me to just enjoy it, because I was like, you know what? I'm just realizing that this is going to be nuts. So Babu Frick is awesome, man. Greatest.
I actually like Babu Frick, yeah.
He and Baby Yoda need a spin-off show. That would be
almost like a cop tag team.
It would be so great.
Yeah.
Babu Frick was fun.
I feel like it visually looked pretty good. Like, it was a good looking movie, and like you guys talked about the Palpatine temple or whatever, that thing looked cool, and I think there were some scenes like that. I'm struggling to find some more positives about this movie.
I liked the Lord of the Rings crossover, how Palpatine had some Nazgul there with him in the Sith temple. That was cool. I didn't know the Nazgul were Sith, but it makes sense.
Yeah. You know what? I will say some plot points or whatever you want to call it, themes of the movie were actually pretty good, in the sense of Rey in The Force Awakens is looking for an identity, looking for family, and they kind of try to conclude that. I think the way they did it was sloppy and didn't really work, but the idea of that theme resolving was kind of cool. There was some stuff like that at the end of the movie where I was like, okay, they did have a plan for some of this stuff. It actually really reminds me of Lost. Does anybody watch Lost?
Well, J.J. Abrams made Lost.
It really reminds me of Lost, where it was like, okay, they had a few things that they knew how that was going to end, but they had a lot of things that they did not know how that was going to end.
I think ending it on Tatooine was a good choice.
But why? It doesn't make sense.
And even
just let him.
Okay.
The little sand tobogganing scene at the very end, a nice little callback to The Force Awakens, because she did that in that movie as well.
But why did she end up on Tatooine? Have you thought about that?
She likes Luke.
What value does a desert world that she tried to escape her own desert world, ends up on desert worlds that she has no association with? Luke wanted to leave Tatooine. His whole motivation was hating that he lived there and wanted to leave. Anakin hated Tatooine. Nothing but painful memories there for him. And sand. And he hates sand. There's no reason. Why would she go back there? There's no meaning to it for her. That's just fan service, right? Just like giving Chewie the medal. They're just these moments.
That
of
was
fan
awesome.
service.
No, that was like
because they're buying. That's how the director's trying to buy your investment. Into the film.
Yeah, that's what directors are supposed to do.
Right, but
they're supposed to make you like.
They throw things. They throw fan service out there that's not earned, and that doesn't make sense internally to the story.
The medal, to me, I felt like if these guys are gonna throw a Hail Mary pass, just go all in. So I actually appreciate the medal, but I even felt like Lando. Why did Lando need to be in this movie? And
I didn't
nostalgia
hate,
bucks.
I didn't obviously it was fan service, but I didn't hate Lando being in the movie, and I like that he wasn't a huge part of the movie, and his character actually had at least some point to him. He was a major element in moving the plot along in the final scene, right, or the final act. So whether we liked how that was executed and happened is a different story, but he was actually integral.
He wasn't
to
useless.
Yeah,
just a nod.
They didn't just throw him in for nostalgia purposes. They actually kind of used his character. So I didn't hate it, but that's neither here nor there. Sam, is there anything else you enjoyed about the film?
I think Poe and Finn's little tete-a-tete throughout the movie was good. Their repartee.
Yeah.
Lots of really funny, snappy dialogue.
That was
I thought this was one of the funniest Star Wars in a way, when it was trying to be, not ironically. Although it did sort of start to wear a little bit. Then it was you guys are trying too hard to snap this script up.
Yeah. It's I didn't mind that either. I think some things I liked. I did like the treatment of Palpatine. I actually didn't mind. I've always thought Kylo Ren could have been the most interesting character in the whole series, but after like Last Jedi, it was just I was so confused at what they were trying to do with
Excuse
his
me,
character.
Kylo Ren?
You mean Ben Solo?
I think you mean emo Ren.
Yeah, emo
Isn't
Ren.
that what we
well, that's they just yeah. Anyways,
that's how I wrote it in my notes.
I actually liked how the sort of redemption arc of Ben Solo and I enjoyed the scene with Han Solo in it. That was just a scene I liked. Also, I actually loved the final scene as well. I hated the line that she used, "I'm a Skywalker." I thought that was just
that whole scene is so contrived.
No, perhaps it's contrived.
A random woman in the desert just crossing by. Hey, what's your name?
No, that's so. This is where that I agree with that.
Where did you come from?
Yeah.
Why are you in the middle of the desert? You don't live here.
I agree with that, but the reason she was there, she was like it was like a burial for Luke and Leia. That's what it was. There was a purpose to that scene and him going back there. Rey going back there.
Right, but do you think Luke wants to be buried on the planet he spent his whole life
I
trying
don't know.
to escape?
He's dead. He's dead.
And you know, Rey.
It was
to do some headcanon. Rey wouldn't have maybe didn't know that either.
Yeah.
So maybe she was just assuming because she didn't spend that much.
But it's
He
also
can talk to his ghost.
It is like it's concluding the Skywalker saga. It's like saying this is over.
We're going back to where we started.
Yeah. Oh well, and just I think it's also like
Burying the past.
Hopefully,
Burn it if you have to.
I think we should never go back to the Skywalker saga because
It's done.
it's terrible what they've done with it, and hopefully that it just dies there. But I did like that scene. I liked her standing there like Luke did with the two sons, and I thought that was cool.
Right, because it's just pulling on your nostalgia strings.
Yeah.
That's it. But it doesn't make sense
I don't
internally
mind
to the story.
nostalgia.
Yeah, there would be no Star Wars movies past A New Hope without nostalgia baiting.
Yeah.
Right. There's nothing wrong with the nostalgia baiting, but it's unearned and doesn't make sense internally.
But
And
I
also-
think I disagree. I think that scene did make sense. It made sense to me. It made total sense.
It made sense to me as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, I was fully expecting a rogues gallery of Force ghosts at the very end. I was like, I was 100% sure I was going to get to see Mace Windu and Qui-Gon Jinn and Anakin even.
Even though so much was in this movie, it was full of missed opportunities, in my opinion, like where they could have done something better. And
Yes.
I would even say, like, we mentioned the Knights of Ren and how lame that kind of fight was with Kylo Ren and the Knights of Ren. But to me, one of the weirdest parts about that scene is he's just in some random hallway in this temple. And this, like, you could have made this epic scene. Like, when he killed Han Solo in The Force Awakens, there was so much, I don't know, ambiance to that shot. And they're on the walkway. And it was, like, just kind of referencing and sort of alluding to all these other great Star Wars scenes. And then he has this scene where he fights 6 other guys and they're just all like just circle around him and have a fight, and that's the end. And it just was so boring.
Yeah, and there was no character build for like the Knights of Ren whatsoever.
So we weren't even
they
emotionally
seemed
invested.
Cool. I was interested.
I'm quite disappointed in that.
But they just didn't
that
develop,
ball dropping.
They didn't develop the Knights of Ren at all, which they really should have been developing through the first 2 movies and then built up to this one. But it was just another one of those like weird things that was just inserted into. But I like the idea of the Knights of Ren. It just felt like very poorly executed. Anyways, should we start with what we disliked?
Yeah, I'm all out of things I like.
I liked lots of fisticuffs in this movie, which you're not necessarily expecting from Star Wars. Like lots of hand-to-hand stuff, and even Emo Ren, when he went to the temple, uses like a blaster and does some cool head kicks and stuff, and that's interesting. And the translocation ability as well with
Objects being transferred.
With objects being transferred and stuff. I like those scenes.
Yeah,
that was some interesting Force powers.
Last couple things that I did like in the film, and we'll probably get like lots of hate for this one myself.
Hold on, there's no we here, yeah.
Well, yeah. I will get a lot of hate. Definitely wasn't a fan of Rose Tico's character and her introduction in The Last Jedi. I thought she was one of the most annoying characters, just the terrible dialogue that was written. And that is no knock on the actress. I think it was almost entirely the writing of her character and how they executed it. But she was a little more tolerable in this film. And her lines were like,
she was tolerable because she was kept off screen for most of the movie.
Yeah,
it just seemed like
but her lines that she did have, they were like, they made sense. They weren't like annoying. It wasn't like her just
spouting off some kind of
saying like we don't fight what we hate, but we fight for what we love or something.
Meanwhile, your friends are getting exploded literally
just
behind
totally
you.
jettisoned all that. Right? They just like abandoned that.
I think that was great.
So you know what? Okay, so that actually brings me to my point. That's starting to head towards the negatives, but is kind of in a gray area. Is the retconning of The Last Jedi through this movie? There's constantly JJ's undoing things from The Last Jedi. I don't think that making a movie should be a medium for two directors to have a Johnson measuring contest. So I think I think it's kind of petty to do that, on the big screen, kind of work with what was established, retcon what you need to, obviously, to progress the story, but don't just purposefully start, lashing out at the other guy, because it just seems so petty to me. And as much as I hate The Last Jedi, like, that was the direction the story's going. Now you can remove that movie completely and just watch The Force Awakens.
That is true.
And this one, and it would make sense.
I definitely thought.
Yeah, you could almost not have The Last Jedi. And
well, just the last 10 minutes where they kill Snoke, though.
I actually feel like they went way overboard, though, apologizing for The Last Jedi, where I would have rather they just ignore things from The Last Jedi. But they were like, hey, we just want you to know nothing's happening between Finn and Rose. Poe is heterosexual. It's just like Luke respects lightsabers and would never throw one over his shoulder. It's just like over and over again.
And he's happy and hopeful.
That's right. It's just like over and over again. It was like, we're sorry this happened in The Last Jedi. We're sorry about, it's like, just stop talking about The Last Jedi. Like, we don't want to hear about it. Just make a movie, That's what I felt like.
And while we're talking about weird off-screen things that are sort of bleeding in-screen, I really don't like the J.J. Abrams club with Greg Grunberg and the other guy from Lost.
Dominic Monaghan.
Monaghan. Like, that really bumps me because I know who these people are, and I know why they're in this movie. It's because they're your buddies. Yeah. Get them out of there. That's not Star Wars.
Dominic Monaghan.
You don't like the fool
totally,
of a Toke
like useless character.
Again, with my Lord of the Rings crossover theory, I think we're really onto something here.
Like, I don't think it was bad to have him in the movie, but it just seems so random. He didn't do anything significant. He was just kind of there in the background.
Well, it was, sorry to reference Last Jedi, but it was like Benicio del Toro's character. It was just a pointless character that the director really liked, and so he wanted to bring him onto the film.
A lot of the new characters too in this movie are just random inserts. Every planet they go to, they happen to run into someone they know from their past, or some new character that decides to join them in a suicidal quest, even though they don't know each other and have no reason to do anything that they do, but here they are.
I think you were talking about this earlier.
I don't even remember their names.
And those are that weird random character who Poe had a thing for, the assassin
bounty hunter type
with the
person.
Cool helmet with like the. Have you ever seen what is it, like downhill, like super fast skiing where they have like those
slalom skiing or
those
whatever?
Crazy aerodynamic helmets?
Yeah.
So he kind of has one of those helmets. And
I kind of thought like
they were just
Samus from Metroid.
Yeah. But those are clear, just like merchandising tie-ins. Her and that Sith assassin guy too, and his little droid.
Yeah.
Were like they were purely in that movie to sell action figures, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, the random rolling droid, which was just like
yeah.
This movie had so many loose ends too, which I was like, why would you start new loose ends when you're trying to tie up all
everything.
these old? I mean, that's J.J. Abrams, but still,
as soon as they brought out that assassin guy, I was like, oh, you're never gonna pay this one off at the end of the movie.
It was like, is something gonna happen with it? Because it was like there was some like subplot about that droid being like abused or something like that. So I was like, okay,
so
are we gonna
weird.
get into that later? And it was like, no, we never.
It was like a
revisited it.
traumatized PTSD droid.
Droid, right?
It was so weird.
Yeah, I just like I kind of shook my head when I like. And why do we need another droid? We do not need another droid. There's too many droids.
And they sidelined R2D2 to get this new one.
Totally,
like,
yeah.
a character that we care about who has history, and like, nah, we're not going to use you. You can stay at back at the base with all the other unused characters, and
so we can talk about droid PTSD.
I think we have to be honest. That Star Wars has always been about selling toys, and so this movie was clear. Here's all the toys we can sell for all the different
and that's
things.
why they brought the porgs back in that one scene.
Buy all our playsets and toys.
I do want to dispute something on that note. Yes, Star Wars is like, obviously that's where it's made its money, is in the merchandising, but I think that was a side effect from what initially happened. I don't think it was planned, at least not from the beginning. Even with the prequels, I mean, you see, it's not like you have these flashes of characters that play no role in the story. Like, any of those side characters aren't really great action figure toys. Like, I'm thinking characters like Jetster Dexter, you know, in a diner. I had that action figure.
And there's like,
but I'm like, right. But I'm saying, like, he doesn't look cool. He's not some kind of, you know, and he pushes the plot forward. So he does have relevance, where they're just throwing characters at you. It's like, hey, buy this toy. Hey, buy this toy. Again.
Yeah. Apparently, according to the Toys That Made Us episode on Star Wars, I don't know if you guys have seen that.
No, but I want
watching
to.
it.
It's on my to-do list.
It was really good. But they talk about how Lucas sold the toy rights for incredibly low, and
weren't they all like the first run was like built on old G.I. Joe models or something that they just repurposed?
And they literally sold empty boxes to kids for Christmas, and were like, "We'll mail you the toys later," because they couldn't make the toys fast enough. Like, it's incredible. But they made more money off the toys than Lucas made off the movies. And so, but I think by the time the prequels came around,
Star Wars,
they were like, we know that this sells toys. You know, you think about the Phantom Menace, like the Naboo starfighters, and like just that there were so many things in that, all the Gungan stuff. Like, there was just tons of stuff where this is going to make
the double-bladed lightsaber.
I definitely remember seeing
Darth Maul, great Halloween costume.
I remember seeing way too many Mace Windu purple lightsaber characters in Toys R Us when I was a kid. But anyways, Christian, I know we've kind of gone over a lot of what we kind of disliked about the film. Maybe you want to was there some like major plot holes or problems with the story that made no sense to you?
Honestly, I can't. I'm telling you, you give me any one scene and I'll point to like 10 things that didn't make sense. It just was just the whole.
How about this one? Since it sounds like we're just in full on poop on this movie mode. So, why did they call what was clearly a Sith holocron a Sith Wayfinder?
Because they are different things.
Wait, they're not different things. That was clearly a holocron.
It had the same shape.
It was the exact same shape, doing the exact same thing.
I'm gonna have to defend Star Wars here, which I don't want to do. I hate that you're putting me in this position. But they are different objects. You like shared technology has similar aesthetics, right? A tablet and an iPhone.
Were there Sith Wayfinders in the EU?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's like you're stealing the design. You're conceptually doing something very similar. So why not just go all the way and say it's a holocron? And then you can do something interesting too.
You can even have like someone pointing like a character.
Exactly.
Right?
You can have a cool character or something.
No, I agree with that, but
it seems like they went out of their way to borrow stuff from the EU, but also be like, this is our stuff. Like, we made this. Like, this is new, you know? And
this is mine now.
It's like, there's so much unsaid. I've been saying this since I watched The Last Jedi. The most interesting Star Wars movie I think they could make right now is the making of these 3 Star Wars movies. Like, I want to see behind the scenes. Yeah. I want to see the boardroom arguments that people went through. And I want to see, like, the cuts that they made and all that kind of stuff.
And there's been so many leaks too about like internal politics and drama surrounding the production of the film.
My pitch for the next Star Wars trilogy, which they almost did in this one, which was just filming Dark Empire and just deep faking the classic crew, because they even did a bunch of that because they had young Luke and young Leia fighting each other.
Yeah, that was another thing that was like, so to me, this movie, like I said, was full of loose ends. The Leia thing, right? Like, I feel like, okay, cool, but it was never explored. Like, there was nothing more to it, and so I'm like, why introduce it? One of the most random scenes of this movie is when Lando at the end of the movie is talking to Finn's new girlfriend. Do you remember that?
Do you know who she is?
Who is she?
She's his daughter.
Oh, no way. Okay,
real-
well,
in
that,
real-
that makes more
But you
sense.
only know that if you buy the book.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
the
like
And you
character.
play all the video games.
Wait,
character.
wait. The character is his daughter, or the
The
The character.
actress
No,
is
the
his
character
daughter.
is supposed
Oh, okay.
It's
See,
Well, I was
heavily-
wondering if
heavily implied.
I was wondering if that was the angle, but they never explained.
And it's
it.
so contrived because she doesn't know him. She sits beside this random guy at a party and says, I forget what line she says, but it's just something you wouldn't ask somebody you just
he was
met.
like, "Where
that
are
was
you
another
from?"
l-
And she was
yeah.
like, "I don't know." And he was like, "We'll have to find out."
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
and I was like, okay,
was like
what does
a
that
total-
mean?
Does that seem like a natural conversation
Yeah.
to you? Like,
Well, that's like another loose end that you're talking about. Like also the scene where Finn and Ray like fall into the sand, the sinking sand, and Finn's like, "I have to tell you something," and then he never.
yeah, that's
there's
also
never
explained in the
Yeah.
books. Where
Oh, is it?
What he's trying. Well, actually, I think JJ came out and said this one because there was a lot of fan theories around it.
Was it like cut?
Yes. I'll get into what happened with JJ.
Can I just
towards
say
the end
something
of the
really
episode.
quick?
Yep.
Okay, this is just a side note, but in Solo, if you've seen Solo, Woody Harrelson's character has like a black girlfriend or whatever. They've been together for a long time. And throughout the movie, they're fighting this pirate or whatever. I don't know what her name is. And at the end of the movie, she pulls her mask off. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's their daughter. Like, it's incredible, right?
Yeah,
and then they
right,
just
right.
don't address that at all. And he's like, it's a girl. Like, under this mask, we thought we were fighting a guy. And I'm like, clearly they filmed this thinking that this character was going to be his daughter in the
Oh,
movie.
okay. Yeah,
and
yeah.
then whoever it was, Ron Howard or somebody in the
Yeah.
re-edits, just cut that out. But it was so weird
Yeah.
and bizarre. And this movie had moments like that where
Yeah.
you're like, okay, I think there was something else that was supposed to be here, but
Yeah,
it
yeah.
just
Missing.
got left on the cutting room
Yeah,
floor.
it's so weird. A lot of weird scenes. I felt that way a lot throughout the film, where I was just like,
There's that First Order Admiral that they seem to be hinting at something with him. Remember the guy who shot Doctor Who?
the guy who shot Admiral Hux,
Yeah,
General.
General Hux,
General Hux.
His name is General Pride.
Yeah, General Pride.
No, here's something I want to point out. Both of you just now, John and Sam, you guys aren't naming these characters. They're nobodies to you.
Yeah.
You can name any prequel character. You can name background prequel characters. But you don't know because
Frito.
you don't care who these new characters are, fundamentally.
I totally
They're just
agree.
faces that
yeah.
appear and they disappear just as quickly. They have no history. And that to me is exactly the problem with all
It's
of
also
this.
another illustration of a bad casting choice for Star Wars. Star Wars should not have known actors.
Yeah,
play-
that's actually
playing
something George
in
Lucas
it.
tried to do
Yeah.
with casting the very first original trilogy. He wanted nobodies
Yeah.
because he wanted this to be, distanced from mainstream
And
Hollywood.
obviously, the Star Wars franchise has been dropping that ball
Well,
big time.
and a lot of the people in the prequels were nobodies at the time, or at least not as big as they are. Like Liam Neeson was not as popular as he is now. Ewan McGregor, Keira Knightley was actually in the prequels. You guys probably
Yeah,
know
I know
that.
she was Padme's clone double.
And
background character.
what was her name? Natalie Portman wasn't really that big either.
I think
so
that was
there's
like
a
her
lot of,
first big movie.
I'm glad
maybe.
you brought up Ewan McGregor because he's something that this last Star Wars movie really reminded me of. Is I think, although there's lots of criticisms for that first trilogy, I think Ewan McGregor's performance is actually really good as Obi-Wan. I think he kind of carries that whole trilogy on his back to some degree in terms of the acting. And this new trilogy, although everybody was fine, like there's no standout performances that
Right.
really stick with me in it.
Yeah, of the new characters,
Except for
the-
Ian McDermott's Palpatine.
yeah, sure.
Only at the very end.
I think like that was.
I
the
heard he
pro-
threw out his back because he was carrying the whole franchise on it.
That's why you needed that big robot arm.
Yeah, I think that was the problem with all the new characters and the new robots, and they were just. It's not even that they were so much bad. I just didn't care about them. Like
Because they
I had
weren't
no
characters.
emotional.
They were
investment.
exposition dumps, all of them.
Can I just say something like the Force Awakens, whatever, people can call it paint by numbers and all that kind of stuff, but the setup for Rey's character is so good. Like you see her harvesting stuff from the Star Destroyer. You see her going down on the little sled. She lives alone. There's like very little dialogue in those opening scenes.
Right.
She makes her little food with the little water packet and all that kind of stuff at the beginning. And it just was really interesting. You're drawn into this character. And I was saying there's a scene in The Force Awakens where she's watching an old lady like polish some piece of metal or something like that. And you could tell like there's so much subtext where she's like, am I going to be this old lady left alone on Jakku dying, like all alone and stuff like that? None of this was, in The Last Jedi is at fault for this too. We just did not get these nuanced pictures of characters where we would actually care about the character.
Yeah, totally.
And I feel like Rey was a character that we did care about in The Force Awakens, but just as this whole thing got so disjointed, it just was like, just finish it. Just like, I don't know, just put the lightsaber in me, man. Like, I'm done. Like, it was, I don't know.
Yeah. I agree with that. And after The Force Awakens was over, I think my biggest problem actually with that whole film was just the fact that Rey could beat Kylo Ren in a lightsaber battle. Having a third Death Star and all that kind of stuff. But I agree. I was actually somewhat interested in finding out what's going to happen to Rey. But then, by the end of the Last Jedi, and even in this film, I wasn't really like sucked into her character all that much. And I was more interested in like Kylo Ren's character, right? Because there was just more character there. There was actually more of a history.
He had more of an arc than her character, which is a big flaw in the writing because it should obviously be the other way around. The protagonist should be getting
the arc.
The arc, totally. Not this guy.
To me, that comes back to what was the original vision of the trilogy?
Yeah,
and I
suspect that since it's J.J. Abrams, there was no real vision.
So the latest rumors. Now's a good time to touch into this. So I don't like J.J. Abrams as a director. I'm just going to straight up say that. I dislike his work. I think he's really bad at endings. I hate the mystery box storytelling. I think it's cookie cutter and derivative and stupid. There's so much negative I can say about J.J. However,
Christian, stop censoring yourself. That's how you really feel.
However, with the latest batch of rumors, supposedly this movie especially was really bad about studio meddling, and they kept him on a very short leash. And even to the point where he's upset with the final product. I don't know how true these rumors are. Of course, the rumors, take it with a crate level of salt. But even with The Force Awakens, apparently, he had a completely different vision for that movie. He agreed to being held on a tight leash for that one in the hopes that he would be unleashed for the rest of the trilogy. And then the studio said, no, you're going to be even on a stricter leash. So this supposedly wasn't his vision. Even The Force Awakens wasn't his vision. And again, like, why would you bring him back to bring the ending? He's so bad at endings.
Well, so I think we should mention the original plan was get to Colin Trevorrow or whatever his name was, was going to be the director of Episode 9, and he backed out probably because he was like, "This is
where's this going to go?"
And like, we have to say too, so much blame for what's wrong with this movie falls on The Last Jedi because, in my mind, Kylo Ren's mask is a metaphor for the three movies. In the first movie, it's like, okay, that's like kind of familiar, something that we know, but it's like a new spin on it. It looks kind of cool, whatever. We'll see where this goes. The second movie's like, we're just going to smash that to pieces, and it's like, okay, well, there's nothing left now. And the third movie's like, we're just going to glue that back together and pretend like
also,
we never smashed it.
That brings up one of my highlights of
that
the
is
movie.
a great metaphor, by the way.
Yeah, it is. But when Kylo Ren goes to the board meeting with all the First Order admirals, and they're like, I think the new mask looks great. That was hilarious.
That was actually pretty funny.
That killed me.
That was like, I'm not, honestly though, so here, I know you were sort of saying that like you didn't like the jabs at The Last Jedi. I enjoyed the jabs.
I'm saying it wasn't the right way to do it. Like, you laugh at it now.
I enjoyed it. Because I'm very spiteful about The Last Jedi.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to
defend
made it
The Last for
Jedi.
you. They wanted you to feel vindicated.
Yeah. Right.
Like the whole fact that even though like the whole fact that they brought in Luke to like grab the lightsaber from being destroyed to just because I hated that in The Last Jedi when Luke threw away the lightsaber.
But so that's a perfect example for why I hate why they did this. Because in that simple act of trying to like cozy up to the fans that were angry at The Last Jedi, and believe me, like I said, I despise The Last Jedi. Don't get me wrong. Like they screw up stuff internally to the story. Force ghosts can now interact with objects.
Yes,
why doesn't Luke just teleport and kill Palpatine holding his own lightsaber?
I agree.
So for a cheap laugh, they screw up so much in-universe stuff. Like,
but it's already so far
it?
gone. Yes, it is worth it. It is totally worth it.
I just feel like too with The Last Jedi, like I do feel like there's big problems with The Last Jedi. But there are some interesting ideas that they could have took into this movie. Like I think about Kylo Ren basically becoming the supreme leader or whatever, right? So if anybody ever played the Episode 3 video game on Xbox, there's a scene at the end where you can kill Anakin kills Obi-Wan and then kills the Emperor and becomes the Emperor.
I love that.
Okay.
And I've always been like, that's kind of an interesting idea for like, you know, an alternate universe Star Wars movie. And we kind of got to see this. And it would have been interesting if like Kylo Ren had lost control of the First Order and there was like a fighting between the First Order and stuff like that.
Total side quest here. Have you heard of the Star Wars Infinities comic book line?
No.
Where they actually do what you're talking about.
Alternate universe kind of stuff?
They do like one little event in each of the three first trilogy changes, and then it's like the fallout. Like Luke misses the shot on the Death Star and doesn't blow the Death Star up, and then all the different things that happen. Or Luke dies on Hoth instead of getting saved by Han.
Yeah, I just think there was some story beats that you could have salvaged from The Last Jedi, but they really just... This is what it feels like. I don't know if you've ever seen people do improv before, but like the first rule of improv is like you never say no to what the first person set up. Yeah, that's right. And this looks like it's like somebody came on stage and was like, "Look, there's a flying blue whale," and then somebody else came on stage and was like, "Oh, no, I don't see that. No, it's not there." And then somebody else came back and it was like, "Yes, there is a flying blue whale, and this guy's wrong." And it's like that would be the worst improv skit ever.
Right.
And that's what these movies feel like.
That's also a hallmark of bad improv. It's just coming up with like really zany, kooky ideas.
Well, that's true too. But I'm just saying, like, I think that they could have taken some ideas from The Last Jedi and rolled with them instead of just being like, how can we undo them?
It was definitely so, just from each movie, it was so disjointed. The tone, not even just the writing, but the tone, the feel, like the character arcs.
There is no like overarching arc.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And why not, like, what if they had said, hey, let's make episode 9 and episode 10 and do
there's
4 movies, and then we can basically make a second episode 8, but just set up all the things that we need to set up.
Abrams actually petitioned to do 4 movies.
Oh, did he?
He got shut down by the studio. Again, according to these rumors.
And you know what? I think the problem too is...
Well, also, according to rumors, Abrams had a 3-hour cut that he wanted, but
yeah,
they
that
cut
was
it
his
down
concession.
to nearly 2 hours. Yeah.
And there's a...
Yeah, I was surprised at how short it was. I was assuming it was going to be like 2.5 hours minimum.
There's a Disney machine behind this all where it's like they plan 2 or 3 years in advance, like the release dates of these movies and all that kind of stuff.
But that's all they planned.
But that shocks me because when you have an IP like Star Wars, people are going to go watch it whenever it comes out, and you have all the time in the world. And it just shocks me that nobody said, okay, this isn't working. It needs more time. We need more time to write it. Like, let's just push it back another year. Like, we still would have seen it if it came out next year. Right. And
well, I wouldn't have.
I think it's a great example of why art by corporation doesn't really work.
Well, and I think one more thing too is that like in 2020, the box office in China is going to be worth more than the box office in the U.S. Right. And I think ever since the international box office became worth more than the U.S. box office, we've seen more and more movies that are just, like you said, frenetic, and the plot and the dialogue and all that kind of stuff has gone downhill. I look at the second Pirates of the Caribbean as the greatest example of this. The first Pirates of the Caribbean is like witty and it's logical and it has like this sort of in-universe logic and what do you call it?
Consistency.
Verisimilitude or whatever the word is. Like, you know, there are pirates that turn into undead pirates or whatever, but it all makes sense. But then in the second movie, Jack Sparrow falls like 400 feet and just like bounces in some like wooden ball, and then everything's just thrown out the window, and it's
essentially
like
everybody's a Jedi.
It's a cartoon, right? It's like it becomes a cartoon, and to me, that's what's happening to these movies.
You know what? That's literally my thought while watching. I was sitting there watching the movie, like something doesn't feel right, and I'm like, it feels like a cartoon. like a live action cartoon is what I'm watching.
And yet, ironically, especially in the special effects and the fighting,
it's super realistic.
It's super realistic.
Yeah.
And like the prequel trilogy was the opposite. They had like scenes in there in lightsaber duels where
it was like over the top.
They're completely 3D rendered.
Yeah.
You know what though, man? So that's probably one of my biggest disappointments of this trilogy is I
There
don't
was
feel like
no
we never got a
final
sweet
saber duel.
lightsaber fight.
There was
Like,
no
just give us one fast lightsaber fight with some people jumping 50 feet in the air or whatever. Like even Rey and Kylo's fight.
It was sort of slow paced.
It wasn't.
You know what? That was one of the things I was debating as putting as a positive. I really don't know how I felt about the lightsaber fights in The Last Jedi. They feel heavy and slow.
Or Rise of Skywalker. Or
Rise of Skywalker. Well, I mean, in all the new Disney stuff,
Sure.
they have kind of
New trilogy,
a similar feel. I feel like they're trying to find a middle ground between like the hyper sporadic fighting from the prequels,
anime fighting,
and the super slow fighting from the original trilogy. I think they're trying to find a middle ground to make everybody happy and feel consistent, which I can actually appreciate. I was sitting there, I was thinking, I don't know if I like this or not. And then they started doing reverse scripts with their lightsabers, and I'm like, I don't like this.
So to me, you could have explained a lot of things in The Last Jedi that were maybe like open-ended in The Force Awakens. So like one of the ways I thought about it was like, okay, Kylo didn't receive that much training as a Jedi, and that's why Rey could beat him in a lightsaber fight, because he's like really not. He just seems like he's more powerful than everybody else because nobody uses the Force anymore. There's like nobody out there to challenge him. Right. And I would have loved to see like, where are Luke's other apprentices? Like, did Kylo kill every single one of them? Like, there could have been so many cool. There could have been so many cool other characters if they had dove into some of that kind of stuff. And I still keep going back to The Last Jedi just messed the whole thing up in a way that I don't know if you could have recuperated. You could have done better than what Rise of Skywalker was, but I wish that they had really sat down and said, okay, we set something up with The Force Awakens. How are we going to answer what we set up?
Yeah.
And, you know, there was just like, not to make this a ragging on The Last Jedi, but, you know, the Carrie Poppins thing and the random characters, like that's when that really started in The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. They both just had these random characters that nobody cared about, that we weren't invested in, that just...
The code breaker.
It
made no sense.
Oh,
But
man,
again,
the whole Canto Bite. And this movie did that. And I felt like they should have been like, okay, people hated Canto Bite and going to random planets and just meeting up with random people and nothing has accomplished.
So let's do that extra.
They did it like 3 times in this movie, and I was like, what?
Yeah. Like, okay, even, again, I'm going to go back to, I don't know this girl's name, but the girl that rides horses.
I think it's Jana. Is it Jana?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I like those horse things.
Calrissian's
they were
supposed
cool.
daughter.
Yeah.
Jana
They're not
Calrissian.
cool riding on a Death Star or Star Destroyer.
You know, I wanted to bring up that Star Destroyer thing. Were the Star Destroyers not like in orbit in space? What was going on there?
Nobody knows.
And then
were they buried in ice with fully staffed crew for how long?
But not
Where
only
did they
that,
come
but
from?
just when they like went on them, there was no wind either. So it's like either you're in space and there's no wind, in which case why aren't you wearing spacesuits when you're down there? Or you're in the atmosphere, in which case there's going to be like 500-mile-an-hour winds because of where you are, and you're not going to be able to stand.
Can I just say too, like, do you think they wanted to use the horse dogs from the Canto Bite scene initially, and then they're like, oh, we can't use that.
We can't associate.
So they're
with
like, we
that.
got to introduce new horses and another planet to go with it, and like all these people were ex-stormtroopers, which is fine, but like I feel like that just seems so random
and
like,
unutilized, and even the way it comes up in conversation, again, super unnatural. It's just exposition dump.
And I also feel like they were like, obviously Finn has to have a girlfriend who is an ex-stormtrooper, so but also black. So
I was gonna say, I'm glad you said it.
So one of the So
that brings up another thing.
Hold on.
No, this is the thing that's made me the most mad about the new trilogy. Is before it started, in the previews, there are some interviews with the actors, and I didn't know this, but Finn's character is British, or the actor.
John Boyega?
No, not for. Is that Finn or
Yeah.
For Finn,
that's
John
Finn.
Boyega. Yeah.
Yeah, John Boyega is British, and Ray is British, and she gets to have her accent, and he doesn't have his accent.
He has to be an American.
He does an American accent. Why does he do an American accent?
By the way, he does a
Zero
great
sense.
American accent, though. You got to
actually
admit that.
That's excellent.
And I actually think that, like, in Force Awakens, he gives a great performance. Like,
Yeah.
Yes, he does, actually.
I didn't hate like Finn's character, but it was just another thing I didn't really care that much about him.
Yeah, but again, that's a lost opportunity.
Yeah.
It was
Such a
cool in
lost
concept,
opportunity.
and then they're just
Yeah.
like, nah.
I think they could have done way more with like it was just like he shouldn't have been like the happy-go-lucky guy. He should have been, and I think Christian and I have talked about that. He should have been like this like disturbed PTSD ex-stormtrooper who had to like shoot children, right? But
Yeah.
he wasn't. He's
super.
And he's like having to resist Manchurian Candidate post-hypnotic suggestions all the time.
yeah.
well, so, like, in The Force Awakens, you get an arc for Finn where he's a coward at the beginning. He's running away. I mean, he's disturbed, but he's also like, I got to run away. I can't help
he's
the
served for
rebellion.
like 5 seconds and starts
Yeah.
shooting his own friends.
But then at the end of the movie, he picks up the lightsaber and fights Kylo Ren
Right.
and loses. But that was a really cool scene, and I feel like we got some development for his character there. But then we just never go back to, and like, another huge problem of all three of these movies is there's just too many characters. Like, I think that was just a
Yeah.
big problem where, like, why did we need purple hair lady in The
Admiral
Last
Holdo?
Jedi?
Oh,
she functioned as what Princess Leia should have been.
Yeah,
And
totally. Yeah.
I have a conspiracy
Or
theory.
Admiral
It's
Akbar.
Disney replacing all your beloved characters with these new characters because they want to sell the new stuff to you. They want Disney's characters, not the old stuff. They want you to see the new stuff as Star Wars.
I think that was more of a Ryan Johnson thing. To be
No,
honest.
because even that started with The Force Awakens. And I got to say, I hated The Force Awakens too. I know that's not what everyone feels, but like they started that back as far back as The Force Awakens where they're replacing classic characters with new characters. And I get you kind of have to do that, but there's also an element of like, they could have done it better. They could have been more respectful. Even in The Force Awakens, they could have done more. In the whole Disney series, Han, Luke, and Leia don't meet up one time. That opportunity is gone
like
forever.
the three of them.
Yeah, they never share
A
the
scene.
screen.
Yeah. They don't have a scene together.
No, not one. Like to me, that's a travesty.
Yeah. The problem, one of the things that was endemic with all the films in the new trilogy was you had to rely so heavily on extended universe stuff, like going outside of
The movies.
the movies. You'd have to read a book, a comic book, watch a show or something
Play
to
Fortnite.
actually. What's that?
Play Fortnite.
To actually like understand what is going on and what the references are. And that's just bad filmmaking if it can't be self-explained within the film itself. And I think that was like one of the biggest, it was just an annoyance that there was so much of that throughout the films. All three of the films, I think, really suffered heavily from that.
Yeah, I would say like each trilogy now has major flaws and problems with it. But this one was probably the biggest disappointment because it just felt like they had the opportunity to do it right. Like they were this close to greatness. You know what I'm talking about? And like it just, they have all the money, all the resources, all the writers, all the directors that they could ever need. And
So squandered it.
yeah, and I was just talking about the MCU, how there was 21 movies in the MCU, and when you watch Endgame, you're like, wow, they actually tied that together pretty well, and they couldn't do it with 3 Star Wars movies. And it just really blows my mind that they could mess this up so badly. But at the same time, can we just say they made their billions of dollars? Like I think they paid Lucas. They bought Lucasfilm $4.5 billion.
Yeah.
And they've probably made more than that off the box office off the 3 movies. Sure. And of course, there's going to be all the other stuff that they're going to make money off of. So they've made their money, and I feel like they've in no way learned their lesson.
Because people like you all decided to go to the theater and watch it. Now that's 4 tickets they got from us now.
Well, and like, can we just say that this movie and Endgame, they're both sort of these event films where it's like you have to go watch them. Just for the sake. I mean, you went and got you went and read the spoilers.
I only went to watch it for this podcast. I want to be super clear about that.
Yeah, so did John.
Yeah, that's right. No, I would say that my hype for this movie was very mild compared to I went and watched Force Awakens. I liked it. Very hyped for The Last Jedi. A lot of mixed feelings after that movie, and for going into this movie just being like, I feel like I should go watch it because it's Star Wars and I just kind of want to know how it ends.
Because you're a slave.
But like, yeah, that's right. But feeling just very meh about it. And to me, this is like the last movie that I feel like I needed to go watch in theaters. And like,
until
I don't
Lord
know.
of the Rings 3.5 comes out.
No, it's an Amazon show. They're making a Lord, and I'll just watch that on Amazon Prime, so that'll be great.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. There's definitely, I don't know. There was a lot of flaws. What do you guys think? Like, do you think they should make another trilogy?
I want Disney to stay as far away from Star Wars.
Yeah,
as they
if
can
Disney's
possibly
not
get.
involved.
No, but what
if
if
one of those big Chinese
I think it'll be
10
studios
cents.
buys it.
No,
I
10
don't-
cents.
I think it might be worse if a big Chinese company does.
I don't think they've learned their lesson from all of this.
I think
to be honest.
I think it might be who's heading it. Like, hopefully if they took out Kathleen Kennedy to be like the head of the project.
Lucasfilm. Yeah, actually, you know what? The Mandalorian gives me hope that if they
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard the Mandalorian is
So we should.
right?
So
Yeah.
let's briefly touch on the Mandalorian.
and then let's
I actually haven't watched it
Me neither.
yet,
So I have
spoilers.
actually been watching it,
and
believe
John's
it or
been
not.
watching it too.
Yeah.
But I watched the first episode, and it's quite good.
Yeah. So this is where I go back to. In my opinion, Mandalorian is good. It's not great. It's not like groundbreaking television. C plus B minus is what I'll give it. But to me, it feels like Star Wars. It feels like
Sure.
It's not, the new Disney movies feel like they're wearing Star Wars face on like a corpse.
Yeah.
This is real Star Wars made by real fans who care about the background and the history and the lore, and they're trying to build something out of it. The director, the maker of the Clone Wars, Dave Filoni. I hope if they do anything else with Star Wars, he's got to be in charge of it, because
there's the Obi-Wan series that's coming out, right?
yeah. Oh, Disney's not done with Star Wars. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Regardless if we want it or not, Disney's going to force it down our throats. But I hope someone like Dave Filoni, who's very competent with the Star Wars material. Like, I love the Clone Wars series.
But John Favreau is in charge of Mandalorian.
Him and Dave Filoni. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like,
And I don't know how much credit goes to one or the other. I don't know how
Yeah,
much
it's-
creative control each person
But
has.
I've liked Jean Favreau's stuff in the past. I wouldn't mind seeing someone like him, even if he didn't direct a film, but if he was just like the sort of like the Kathleen Kennedy, like kind of in charge of the whole
of
project.
Lucasfilm.
Yeah, like to me, I could be convinced to come back maybe if somebody was like that. They have a lot of stuff in the past that I really like, and they could service it pretty well.
I just think okay, this is what I've always thought about Star Wars. Maybe this is a hot take on you guys' Star Wars podcast, but I think that the universe of Star Wars and all the possibilities are a lot more interesting than almost all of the Star Wars things that they made. So
100% agree.
I look at all three trilogies, and I don't know if any of them are really great movies, to be honest with you. And I think why we loved A New Hope was because we cared about this character, Luke Skywalker, and his hero's journey. It's a very basic story, but there's a lot of cool extras that kind of meld in with it. And I look at the prequels, and there's tons of cool, where's that guy from, and what does that thing do, and all these kind of questions. I love the Star Wars video games, and I kind of grew up with Star Wars in the 90s, so we got the special edition coming out where Han shot second or whatever, and other things like that. But there was lots of just unique Star Wars stories that were coming out. Why I love The Mandalorian is because you care about these characters and they're interesting, and he goes on these adventures, but there's a bigger story. And it just feels like you're in this really interesting universe. But not everything in The Mandalorian is epic. It's not
There's
like
small stories.
There's no planets that are going to blow up or anything
Yeah.
like that. It's that's what makes it really interesting. And so I think if they were going to do another trilogy, they set it in the Star Wars universe, but detach it from any Star Wars thing that's come before it. Nothing connected. That's what I would do. And so whatever, you can put lightsabers in, you can put Jedis in, you can put whatever you want, but no cameos from other characters.
Yeah.
No,
Fan
this is going to
service.
turn into this. This is going to, then write your own story, film all three movies together like they did with Lord of the Rings. So it's one cohesive story and put it out there. And it's whatever. If people complain after the first movie, it's too late. We've shot the other two.
You're getting
and
it
gonna
whether
have
you
to
like it
watch
or not.
Yeah. And plus, it would be way cheaper, right? I mean, Lord of the Rings was a real budget project if you're talking about 3 massive movies coming out.
Yeah, and Lord of the Ring, I mean, it's hard, like for a trilogy of films, I think Lord of the Rings really sets the bar super high, and because it was so cohesive, you could almost watch. I think especially the second and third movies, you could almost watch them as one film, right? Like just split in 2. But to have something so cohesive would be good, and I completely agree. Like I think there's just too much like bad blood over the Skywalker saga, and we just need to like leave it and move on and make a completely new,
go super far into the future, super far into the past.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and even though it is a connected movie, a lot of people talk about Rogue One as one of their favorite Star Wars movies. I liked Rogue One, and it's probably the least connected to all of it in the sense of like we do run into those characters, but it's the very end,
right?
And that movie just felt free to explore a lot of new ideas, and it was a fun movie. And I'll just say one more thing. EA has had the monopoly on the Star Wars video games, just like Disney's had it on the movies. And a lot of people remember in the 90s, there were so many Star Wars games coming out. Some of them were bad, but there was lots of good ones.
Yeah, totally.
And they didn't have to tell an epic Skywalker saga story.
Yeah. Republic
they could just
Commando.
be like, or like Rogue Squadron. We talk about Shadows of the Empire.
Jedi Knight.
Episode 1 Racer. Like just stuff in the Star Wars universe that's fun.
Yeah.
And it's not the world is on the line.
There's so many things you can play with in the Star Wars, which is why we love it.
The
right?
KOTOR video games. It's like the world was on the line, but it was a completely original way to tell that kind of big epic storyline.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree. Christian, you have any more thoughts?
I have plenty of thoughts. Kind of going back to the, like, I think you captured the whole thing of like there's a mythological backing to the original trilogy and even the prequels for all its flaws. I'll be the first to admit I love the prequels, but I know they're not good movies. And I think the Disney movies have the opposite problem where they don't have a backing. Like, can you really think of like one cohesive narrative story that is told through all 3 of these movies, right? Like, with the prequels, it's a story of the rise and fall of Anakin Skywalker, right? The prequel is like the birth of hope and, the hero's journey.
Not to do bad improv, but Kylo Ren.
But that's a missed opportunity. That could have been something.
But it was still a theme that went throughout the whole movie.
Yeah,
and you could kind of tell
an
where
angry
it was
renegade
going.
is just an angry renegade.
No, but
2 full movies and then suddenly does a heel turn.
It's not sudden,
at the
though.
end.
He was struggling the whole time.
Yeah, it wasn't sudden. Yeah.
Sure.
I would go back.
I will concede that one minor point, but there's no mythological backing to it, right? There's nothing that tells a story. Even with The Mandalorian, it ties so strongly to spaghetti westerns, right? They draw these influence that were Star Wars influence. You have the Seven Samurai movies. All those things are told through these old Star Wars movies, but there's nothing like that with this new stuff. This is like Sam said, is pure corporate like machine. What do people like? Checklist.
Right.
All right, send it out. Cash in.
Yeah, like I would say now the Last Jedi just feels like it feels worse because it's just totally out of place sandwiched between these 2 movies, and that's a huge problem in the sense of it just feels unnecessary.
And I think The Last Jedi made Rise of Skywalker feel out of place too. Like Rise of Skywalker is disjointed, The Last Jedi is disjointed, and it's the grand. And I think you're right. There is no grand narrative to the whole thing.
Yeah, and again, like that, the real world ties. There's no, like I said, the mythology.
So there's a great line in The Force Awakens where Finn and Han and Chewie are trying to take the base, and Finn like tells Han like he doesn't actually have a plan, and he's like, "We'll just use the Force."
Yeah,
and Han's like, "That's not how the Force works."
Right.
And to me, that's what these movies feel like, where it's like, I get it. We are talking about space wizards and laser swords, but there does need to be some in-universe rules that are held to, or it doesn't make any sense. Like you're talking about, why doesn't somebody just teleport and kill the Emperor or whatever, right? Like, why doesn't, I don't know. It feels like they threw everything out the window, and there was some rules in the original movie.
Yeah.
And when the heroes have no limits, when they're just like these Super Saiyans teleporting around the universe, it's not interesting anymore because the conflict's not there, because they're just OP. And a lot of people talk about how OP Rey was in this movie.
And but not just her. So the whole part, They storm a Star Destroyer, the three of them. They run through the halls, gunning down stormtroopers.
Oh, yeah.
They don't take cover. They don't, there's no, like, literally, you're not invested in any level of danger. Literally blasting stormtroopers, running full tilt through their ship. Like, what's to stop them from just shooting up the whole ship and just calling it a day?
A lot of people talk about how this movie felt like a video game, and in a lot of ways it does, right? Like, you run around, you're OP, and you just have these, like, fetch quests on these different planets, and you talk to random people who give you another fetch quest. And that was kind of what the movie was.
That's a good analogy for it. Yeah. I think, obviously, I think we all kind of feel the whole trilogy, the new trilogy in general, which we're talking about in a broader sense, but Rise of Skywalker in particular, I did enjoy it. I had fun with it, but it certainly, I don't think it was a great film. I think there really were a lot of flaws. And I think, to be fair, I think people are putting the film under a microscope, more so just because of all the drama that surrounded it. And so it kind of suffers from that as well. Like, it can't get away with anything because the divisiveness over the first two films and then trying to, like, rein it back in and then not having a cohesive vision.
Like, it was a suicide mission from the start.
Yeah, exactly. It seemed like it was just doomed to fail. Like, there wasn't anything that they could do.
And, like, I'm probably being too hard on it. Like, I will say I actually like JJ and I like a lot of his movies, but
this is also where I disagree with Christian. I think JJ Abrams
is a hack, biggest hack in Hollywood.
He made the.
He made bank is what he made.
So the Star Trek trilogy, the first two J.J. Abrams were great films.
That's what I think too.
The third one was, like, lame. It was, like, not nearly as good as J.J. Abrams.
So it's interesting coming into. So I'm not a Trekkie. I don't know a lot about Star Trek. I had seen, like, the old 60s one, and that was about it. And so going into this Star Trek movie, I came out of the theater like, that was awesome. And Star Trek fans were like, that was the worst thing I've ever seen, I love how somebody in The Onion was like, if I wanted to see good-looking people doing cool things, I'd watch sports, all right? But I thought it was a good movie. And I think he does well when, like, his best movies, I think, like something like Super 8. I think Super 8 is a great movie. I don't know if you've seen it before. But it's his own thing, and it's kind of was his own pitch. It's original film. Cloverfield maybe is not that great, but but I do think, like, it's okay to play the mystery box game, but stuff like Rey being Palpatine's granddaughter, like, it just felt so forced. Was that the plan from the original? Like, I wonder if she was supposed to be Snoke's granddaughter or whatever, and I'm confused with the whole. Okay, so she's Palpatine's granddaughter. That's what gives her significance, I guess. But then at the end of the movie, she's like, I'm a Skywalker. Yeah. And I don't get it. Like, why not just be like, I'm a Palpatine, but I've redeemed the name? Or why not introduce that at all?
Because I think that would be a little bit like going, I'm Sam Hitler.
Yeah, I guess so.
I don't think there's any amount of redemption I could pull off.
Here's, like, any scene. Give me any scene and I'll take. Well, so even that scene, it would make more sense for Rey to even call herself a Solo. If she's going to rip someone off, she had actual ties to Han Solo. She's supposedly unearnedly loved Ben.
Sorry, I just have to say one more thing, but yeah, go ahead.
Ben Solo, right? Like, it's just, it doesn't make sense internally to the plot.
That kiss was the cringiest kiss I've ever seen. Like, you could tell that they even hated it.
Uncomfortable.
As, like, the actors, and it was so just like I could see like a hug or something like that, but
a high five.
It just did not like
fist bump.
It just did not feel like there was ever a romantic relationship there. Like, if you look at the movies leading up to it, like, yes, there was weird like forced Skype calls in The Last Jedi.
Their relationship was just weird,
but it was like a brother-sister relationship, and that was another thing too. I mean, a lot of people. I don't know if you guys ever. A lot of people were like, maybe she is Kylo Ren's secret twin that was hidden away on Jakku. And I'll just say one more thing too. You always thought they were going to go back to Jakku. They never went back to Jakku. Why was Palpatine's son a good guy or his daughter? I don't know if he was his son or his daughter.
You have to read the book.
Is that in the books?
Like, probably.
Who knows?
to explain almost anything, you have to read the extra material there.
I would have rathered her be like Obi-Wan's granddaughter or something else.
I know that was a fan
just
theory.
Was so weird.
When The Force Awakens came out, I thought they were going to go play the whole twins angle, and a lot of that comes from the EU too. There's a whole story of Jason and Jaina Solo, and one of them falls to the dark side, and that whole redemption story. I thought that could have been good. It's just been a cheap knockoff again of something they did already in the EU. Before we kind of wrap up here too, I just wanted to throw out a couple of one-liners too. I love John Williams. I think he's a very talented musician, and he's obviously done every theme for Star Wars, every notable theme for Star Wars. Anyways, if you hear Star Wars music, it was John Williams. This movie, the only standout ones are remixes of anthems we've already heard. That's another thing that stood out to me. You know, you have the prequels, man, Duel of the Fates. You hear that come on, instantly you're pumped. You know what, in your mind, you already picture what's happening.
Can you hum it for us?
No. A Hero Falls in Episode 3, another standout, theme song. The Imperial March. Everyone knows the Imperial March. Everyone knows the Star Wars theme. Everyone knows the Skywalker theme. What theme from these new movies stands out to you?
I mean, I can think of Rey's theme a little bit because it was like at the beginning of The Force Awakens and at the end. But I wonder if that's another thing where, at least for this third movie, there just wasn't enough time to.
But even all the Disney movies together, what stands out as a theme?
Yeah,
musically.
I remember Rey's theme. It's like,
vaguely.
Right, but is it?
Yeah, not very well though. You're right.
Is it Duel of the
nothing
Fates?
stands
Is
out.
it the Imperial March? No, it's not.
Yeah.
And how involved was he? I don't know.
He wrote. Well, true. Yeah, he's credited.
I didn't mind. Actually, my one thing I liked about The Last Jedi was the score. I actually thought it. I even listened to it on Spotify.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like actually quite good. But
it doesn't stand out.
Yeah, it's not as iconic, I guess, as previous Star Wars music, but I still thought it was quite good.
Yeah. So ultimately, I mean, my closing remarks are this: this movie fails as a movie, as a standalone. If you just look at it from an artistic perspective, there's no real plot. It's just exposition, jump to the end, done. Frantic movie making. It fails to tie the trilogy together, so it fails as this Disney Star Wars movie. It fails the movies that came before it, and ultimately it fails as a Star Wars movie. To me, it didn't feel like a Star Wars movie. It felt like this corporate cash grab, and that's all I have to say about it.
Yeah. Didn't love it. Didn't hate it. The whole trilogy, I'm kind of over it. I'm kind of glad it's over in a lot of ways. It was exciting, but when it was announced, but I think it failed to live up to expectations. But yeah, those are my closing remarks.
Can I just say, I had fun, but at the same time, it was a huge disappointment, and I hope to see better from Disney in the future, or Tencent, whoever.
Yeah.
I think the fact that we all probably enjoyed the prequel trilogy more than this trilogy says it all.
You are listening to the Star Lords Podcast.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Are you stuck up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder?
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to give the show a 5-star rating and review, and give us a follow on social media. This episode was produced and edited by me, Jordan Swaim, written and directed by Christian Lutz and Sam Swaim. All original music was scored and recorded by my music project, Farewell to Shadowland.